We're privileged this morning to have our senator from Missouri, Senator Roy Blunt, is going to join us, and we're going to have an open discussion, folks, about issues pertaining to everything going on in this country today. If there's a question you have that you'd like to ask, please do, but please make it a question and not a speech. We'd like to have the senator be able to reply. So if you have an area that you would like to have addressed, just call up and give us your question, and then let us reply, and we'll do the best we can. There's a lot going on right now in this country. I think we're going through a tremendous change, and Senator and I were just talking about some of the changes that we'd like to see going forward. Senator, how do you see the health and the direction of the Republican Party now?
Well, I think we have to be thoughtful as we come across as a party that's willing to govern. Charles Krauthammer said not too long ago that there are two political parties in the country, and one of them can't govern and the other one appears not to want to. And so we've got to be sure that we meet the need of people to run the government. One thing people always have traditionally thought the Republicans did better than Democrats was actually run the government. And we lost a little of that in the last few years in people's sense of whether we could run the government or not. And we need to get that back. We need to understand that the government can't do everything, and in fact, the more things the government tries to do, the fewer things it does well. I actually think, Dave, that the rollout and the increased information on the president's health care plan is a big moment for conservatives like you and I and other conservatives to make the case that the government is not capable of doing many of the things that others think the government can do, and particularly not capable of running 16% of the economy or making people's health care decisions. I actually think the biggest enemy of Obamacare will be Obamacare.
Yes, I mean, we're really starting to see that. And who was the famous American? Was it Franklin or Jefferson said that a government can do everything for you, can also do everything against you?
Whoever said it was, it sounds like probably Jefferson, but many Republicans over the years have had that philosophy. And of course, the first Republican president, Abraham Lincoln, famously said in one of the few speeches he gave in 1860 at Cooper's Union in New York, as he was trying to define this new Republican Party, he said government should only do for people what people cannot better do for themselves.
And he also said you cannot build up the poor by destroying the rich.
Exactly. And we need to figure out how we talk about how people who are aspiring for better things in the country have an opportunity for those better things. It can't just be a constant discussion of the job creators, but a discussion of what happens when people are able to move up in a society and how you let that happen. And frankly, none of us should be happy with what we've seen the last several years, where really the middle class incomes in real dollars have been stagnant or declining. Frankly, I think, while not a responsibility for government, businesses ought to think about how reasonable it is for the people who run those businesses to make so much money than the people that do the work at those businesses. Capitalism can be its own worst enemy if it becomes a system where you try to just benefit a few people, then benefit lots of people. You almost have a colonial view of the economy, which we're going to go in, we're going to take all we can, and we're going to leave just enough for people to continue to want to be in the system, but not enough for people to move up in the system. And our party has always been more of a Main Street party, frankly, than a Wall Street party. Look at the big donors to our party and their party. The big donors to our party are just the thousands of people that give a little bit of money, that are running businesses and trying to do what they can to support their family and want their family to be the priority rather than the government to be the priority.
Well, as we know, that's the strength of any civilization that's ever been great, is the strength of the family unit. We're going to go to our first caller here, Roger from Branson. Roger, welcome to Morning Line.
Good morning. I have two things for you. One is something for the guys overseas. My son-in-law just got back from his 5th trip to Afghanistan, and he's planning his 6th trip. He's part of a clearance company. They deactivate roadside bombs and do those sorts of things. So we didn't have to, but we went to Bass Pro Shop while he was over there and got Bass Pro donated over 200 pairs of wool socks with a lifetime guarantee.
Oh, well, good for Johnny Morris.
And some beef jerky and some different things that they did for him. And the reason was because they couldn't get them over there. You know, they used to have what's called PX or different things where they could get candy bars and different things, and they would throw them in their coats, and when they went out on patrol, they had things they could snack on.
Roger, I don't want to cut you off, but we know, do you have a question rather than a statement for the senator?
Well, I wanted to encourage everybody, but I do have a statement.
No, you've already given us a statement. Do you have a question?
I have a question.
Okay, sir.
The Republican Party, when are they going to change to the fact where you have people like Kathleen Sebelius, who was a Republican governor of Kansas, if I'm not mistaken, and we're riddled with these people, and they can't get elected in their own town. Even here in our own community, we have people who are actually liberal Democrats running as Republicans. They get elected, and then they turn out just like her.
Okay, well, listen, I will let the senator address that one. Roger, thank you.
Well, first of all, Roger, thanks to your son-in-law and your family for the commitment you make to defend the country and the effort you make to provide extra things to people who are there. I've been to Afghanistan. I certainly haven't been there on tours of duty 6 times, and frankly, 6 times is too much. We have to figure out how we deal with those who serve us in a way that doesn't just wear them out and exhaust them and their families. And it's troublesome to hear about a guy who's going back to Afghanistan for 6 times, though that wasn't a point you made. You didn't suggest that this was something he was complaining about at all, but it's a place where there are no front lines, where the tension there all the time is beyond what it should be. At the same time, I hope we can negotiate an agreement so that we can have achieved some of the things in Afghanistan for a long time that we have achieved for a short time. Kathleen Sebelius was not a Republican. She was the Democrat governor of Kansas. And, of course, it says a lot about Branson and Taney County that if you want to run for office, you run as a Republican. And it's just going to be up to the primary voters to figure out who in those primaries they're going to allow to move forward as a reflection of our party. You know, the old view of William F. Buckley was that he was for the most conservative person that could be elected. And that's always been my view. I'm pretty conservative and have a voting record that proves that. But in some of our states and some of our congressional districts and some of our legislative districts, not always the most conservative candidate in a primary is the one who can win the general. But I'm for the most conservative candidate who can be elected, and that would include what happens in Taney County. But we all know in southwest Missouri that if you're going to run for office, you want to run in the Republican primary if you actually want to be elected to office, and I hope we continue to maintain that kind of dominance as conservatives and as a party.
Well, I guarantee you, Senator, my experience has been that I can have a much better conversation with a liberal Republican than I can a liberal Democrat.
There you go.
So, I mean, our party has to be a big tent, folks. We don't, no one side of our party has all the answers. We're going to go right to the phones again. Scott from Springfield, welcome to Morning Line.
Yeah, thank you. I have 2 questions. First question is, what do you think of Scott Walker's plan in Wisconsin regarding taking sort of a grant for health care and using it at the state level to manage the health care situation? Second question, that went completely out of my head, so I guess I'll let you go and let you answer the first question.
Let me go with the first question. Well, I think Scott, that Scott Walker's done a fine job in Wisconsin. He showed a lot of courage. In the recall election, interestingly, the votes he got from labor union families were significant, even though the focus was, gee, what are you doing to get these pensions and other things more in line with the public sector? And I like him. I don't know him as well as I hope to, but I've met him. I heard from him on Thanksgiving. I think anytime Medicaid, particularly, giving a fixed amount of money to the states and let them structure a program based on how health care should function in their state is better than somebody in Washington, D.C. trying to set up a plan that will work everywhere. One size fits all almost never fits anybody. And I think Scott Walker understands that, as do most of our 30 Republican governors around the country.
Yes, and that's really the strength of the Republican Party, folks, is to get more Republican governors and state legislatures elected so we can have a great deal more influence. So if you want to have an immediate impact on the party, those are the people that we need to get in office and keep in office. We're going to go straight to the phones again. Bob from Springfield, welcome.
Hey, yes, I just want to say we're listening to one of the 100 United States senators that are in the entire world, and he's on this radio station taking cold calls. I think he's a very brave man. Our local representative hasn't done this since I believe he was elected. I thank you, sir, and I salute your courage.
Well, I'm glad to do that. I come by this station a lot. I'm on it sometimes from my car in Washington on my way when I'm driving into work, because I do like to listen to the people that I work for. Our congressman, Billy Long, was on this station a long time every day, and his views are pretty well known. And
yeah, he calls in every Friday.
He calls in, but I'm glad to hear from you and glad to get a chance to work for you. It's been a very frustrating time for all of us. A Senate where the appropriations process, the fundamental thing that the Congress should do is debate the spending priorities, which become the other priorities for the country, hasn't really worked for about 8 years now. 8 years when we had this line-by-line cutting come in January, brought all the service chiefs in before the Armed Services Committee that I'm on and before the Defense Appropriations Committee that I'm also on. And in every instance, they said the line-by-line cutting, so-called sequestration, was a problem. But they said, a bigger problem is you're cutting budgets that we haven't wanted for 6 years. This is the budget we wanted 6 years ago. They'd say when we all hear that term continuing resolution, the Congress is going to do the CR or the continuing resolution. What the continuing resolution means is you've got a Congress, mostly in the Senate, who throw up their hands and say, well, we don't want to really talk about how to spend the money this year, so we'll just spend it the way they spent it last year. And essentially have been doing that now for almost 8 years. We've got people who are starting the second year of their second term in the Senate who've never seen the appropriations process work one time. I'm hoping that we can almost do a demonstration project this year, and if we can agree on this top line number that's on the front page of every paper yesterday and today talking about what happens if this agreement is reached, the biggest thing that might happen from this agreement is moving forward and debating and trying to amend every one of the appropriations bills for the first time since Harry Reid became the majority leader, and I hope we see that happen.
I tell you, that would really be an eye-opener for the American people. You don't realize, folks, that the Democrats really have been holding the country hostage, and Harry Reid's behavior, I think, when analyzed in the future, is going to be deplorable. And Senator and I had an offline conversation about that, and we won't continue that one on the air since we do have other callers. We have Corbin from Springfield. Corbin, welcome to Morning Line.
Morning. Something you said here a little bit ago, Senator Blunt, about the middle class basically being stagnant or going down, but yet you voted for Obamacare, which you knew was going to kill the middle class.
Well, of course, let's just get this straight right here. Of course, I didn't vote for Obamacare, and I led our effort in 2009 to try to come up with alternatives. And the major newspapers in this state over and over again say there's been no bigger opponent of Obamacare than Roy Blunt, and they don't say it in a positive way. So I've never voted for it. I've never thought it would work. I'm on the floor every week, particularly now, talking about the calls we get from people and the stories they're telling about why it won't work, and all of those are totally consistent with the predictions I've made for the outcome if we continue on this path since 2009. But go ahead.
Well, Corbin,
It was my understanding that I read somewhere that you did vote for it.
Well, you'll have to find that and show it to me, because I have never voted for it, and I voted multiple times to not do it even after it passed. The biggest enemy, as I said, Corbin, a minute ago, of Obamacare will be Obamacare. The president can say whatever he wants to about this health care plan until the cards are played. And now, as obviously nobody believes anymore you can keep your insurance if you like it. Nobody believes anymore that you for sure can keep your doctor if you like your doctor. Pretty soon people aren't going to believe that you're going to have better coverage for less money, because as people are able to sign up now, they're generally finding out they have less coverage for more money. The president said this would cost $2,500 less per family than they were paying. Families will be lucky if it doesn't cost $2,500 more for family, not less. And I think there'll be more uninsured people 2 years from now than there were 2 years ago. And that's what I've been saying for years now. And this is a plan that won't work. It's based on faulty principles. But there were other things we could have done that would have allowed the best health care system in the world to work better. What we had was great, but it wasn't working great for everybody. And I'm going to go to this floor this week and talk about the 7 or 8 bills that I filed and we debated on the House floor in 2009 that would have been better things to do, like buying across state lines, medical liability reform, expanded high-risk pools, so people that did have a problem with a pre-existing condition had a place to go, but there was a better way to do that than just tell people you can get insurance after you're sick, which means why would you get insurance before you were sick? People are smarter than the government believes they are, and that's one of the reasons that this plan ultimately will not work.
All right, John, who do we have next?
It'll be John in Lebanon.
Okay, John in Lebanon, welcome to Morning Line.
Thank you for taking my call.
You're welcome, sir.
I have a 2-part question.
All right.
The first part is, how do you feel about government mandates and corporate welfare?
And what's the second part?
The second part is, how can you justify supporting the renewable fuel standard when it takes a gallon of petroleum to make a gallon of ethanol? In other words, it's a 1-to-1 proposition. You're wasting a gallon of fuel to produce a gallon of a product that nobody wants or needs. I want to hear your explanation of how you can justify that corporate welfare for agriculture.
Now, the first question, clarify that just a little bit. What do you mean by corporate welfare? Give me an example of what you're talking about.
Well, the renewable fuel standard is nothing but corporate agriculture welfare.
Okay. So you want to talk about the ethanol deal?
Well, ethanol and biodiesel both.
Okay.
But,
well, I think, John, more American energy of all kinds is a good thing. I don't think it's a 1-to-1 proposition. And in our state, most of the ethanol facilities in Missouri are owned by farmer groups, not by some kind of big outside corporate effort. But I'm for more American energy of all kinds, whether it's the Keystone Pipeline, natural gas that we didn't think we had just 12 or 15 years ago, oil from fracking. More American energy means more American jobs. And the marketplace, whatever subsidy you create for people to get into the marketplace, it's like subsidizing the railroads, which the federal government did in 1862, so you could get them started. But you need to have a subsidy that will end. And remember, ethanol, when we actually added ethanol to gasoline, replaced something called, MTBs that would never go away once they got into the ground. So that was, we were putting other things in gasoline at the time that were far more troublesome than ethanol. The blender's credit has gone away, as it should. All these things don't have to stay forever to create an opportunity for more American energy. And, of course, the greatest opportunities we now see in more American energy is the oil and gas opportunities in shale, which is going to, between us, Canada, and Mexico, the United States could be energy self-sufficient in a handful of years if we want to be. This is one of the concepts the government should embrace, and the way the government embraces it is by not having rules and regulations that make more American energy possible. And I happen to believe that renewables are part of that, but shouldn't be subsidized by the government once they've figured out a way to make them to make their way into the marketplace. And so you're seeing those laws that allowed that to happen go away, like the blender's credit that went away in the last year or so.
Okay, does that answer the question?
He's gone.
Oh, he's gone.
Yeah.
Okay, who do we have next?
Bob in Christian County.
Okay. Hi, Bob. Welcome to KWTO Morning Line.
Well, I thank you for taking my call. And I'd like to ask Roy Blunt a point-blank question. Why did he take money from the most evil corporation there was in the world, which was Monsanto, that puts poison back in our food line? And there's been several calls in the last, I'd say, couple of 3 months since this has happened.
Well, you know,
we cannot get no answer, and we'd like to hear from Roy himself.
Okay, well, do you understand how political action committees work?
Yes.
These companies have political action committees which actually set up funds and contribute to a number of candidates, Democrats and Republicans. So by a senator or congressman receiving some sort of financial assistance for campaign assistance from any particular area does not mean that he endorses that particular product or individual. But I'm going to let the senator go ahead and answer it himself.
We both know that if you take money, that means you're consistent with them.
No, that doesn't mean that at all. But, Senator, I'll let you answer the question.
Well, of course, it doesn't mean that at all. And this is a company that has lots of employees in our state, and they contribute to the Political Action Committee. The most that committee can give is $5,000 a cycle, I think, or whatever it is. It's not a significant amount of money in terms of all the money you raise to run for the Senate. It's a very, very, very small percentage of that. But let's talk about the greater question, like what happens at the Danforth Life Science Center in St. Louis, what happens whether it's Monsanto or Pioneer Seed or any of the other companies that essentially have used science to advance in a quicker way what would normally have happened in the field. You can't meet the world food needs without science. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with people that want to use organic products. I'm for that as well. We have a great opportunity to try to help feed a growing world population. Agriculture is important to Missouri. Science is important to agriculture, whether the research is done by Monsanto, the University of Missouri, or Missouri State University, all of whom do important agricultural research, and I support all of that.
Well, we're going to have to take a break, but I'd like to say I used to eat a lot of natural foods until I learned that most people die of natural causes. So with that, KWTO, we're going to pay some bills here, folks. Thank you, Senator. And are you going to be able to stay?
Not going to be able to stay, but I look forward to coming back.
God, we love having you, and anytime you can call in on the phone or anything like that, it's really revealing, and I know that you all out there appreciate the fact that you have a senator that will take the time and come here and as the gentleman said earlier, have an open mic and try to answer your questions directly. If you have further questions you'd like to ask the senator, mail them to or email his office. He has an office here in Springfield and also in Washington, and I'm sure they'll get back to you as soon as they can. Again, thank you, and we'll be right back.